Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. You might be feeling right now what a lot of people are feeling. Seeing global media coverage concerning the war in Ukraine almost completely disappear. And in the short term, the reason is the war in the Middle East. It's sucking all the oxygen out of the global media sphere. With the world's attention locked on Gaza, Ukrainian soldiers fear being forgotten. So here on this YouTube channel, I'm going to continue focusing on the war in Ukraine, focusing on Russian war crimes. But I do need to make a comment about the war in the Middle East real quick. And I just want to say, this isn't going to last very long. A couple months tops. In my opinion, Hamas and the Palestinians, they can neither win or lose this war. Same is true for the Israelis. They can neither win or lose this war. I think people know this, but there's just so much emotion involved given religion and family ties to this country. But this conflict's been going on for over 70 years. And nothing Hamas does, and nothing Israel does, I think is going to change the status quo. So I think the media will lose focus, will lose interest in what's going on, and it will drift back to, in my opinion, the more important conflict. Which war going on right now will impact more people globally going decades into the future? Yes, once again, I understand if you have religious or family ties, this conflict matters to you. But in my opinion, Russia is the bigger threat to more people around the world in the coming decades. So here's an interesting thread from ChrisO. Does Vladimir Putin actually want to end the war in Ukraine? This is a very interesting commentary from Russian political scientist Vladimir Pastukov, suggesting that Putin is now addicted to war like a drug, and that continuing it indefinitely is essential for the regime's survival. So here's the quote I want to read. If war is removed from public life, then the regime will have to switch gears and concentrate on the routine domestic agenda. After everything that has happened, this transition would be fatal for the regime. So I think Putin and his inner circle have realized this, that they've ratcheted up the propaganda, ratcheted up the jingoist Z pro-military rhetoric to the point where they can never go back. Putin can never go back to just giving speeches about the pension system and education and infrastructure projects. So as long as Putin remains alive, they're never going to give up this war, this existential war against the West. And there's already a country that we're describing, and that would be North Korea. North Korea has remained on high alert in a state of active war since 1950. The regime tells their people the military's the #1 priority. That evil Western alliance of South Korea and the United States, they're going to attack us again. They're a threat to us. So all state resources, all people must sacrifice everything to maintain the most powerful military in the world. So what's the consequence of this? And North Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world. It's one of the worst places in the world to live. And this is Russia's future for as long as Putin and his regime remains in power. They will sacrifice roads, schools, hospitals. They will let people live in squalor and filth as long as every available dollar, ruble, goes towards their military, goes towards protecting the regime and the inner circle in Moscow and St. Petersburg. They'll have 2 nice cities. Every other city in Russia will not matter. And this isn't speculation. This isn't my theory. This is what the Russians are saying on Kremlin State TV. Here's Solovyov spelling it out for anyone delusional enough to believe that Russia will return to being a normal state if it ever was. But here's what Solovyov is telling the Russian people. We need to realize that the West is our enemy, systemic, centuries-old, millennia-old, existential. There can be no mutual coexistence. We can be so strong that they have to bite their filthy tongues, or as soon as we weaken, they will try to destroy us, as they have done every century. Any games with them will weaken us. We should only act out of expediency. There is no need to try to change their minds or to please them. We just need to realize that they are the enemy. Systemic, well-trained, motivated, convinced, which means we have to fight for minds. Not theirs, but ours. So I think Putin believes this. This is the official propaganda narrative being fed to every Russian on television, every Russian child in school, that the wars are never going to end. Russia's going to continue these wars forever because they have to now. It's just like the Kim regime in North Korea, where they have to maintain perpetual war, like Orwell's 1984, in order for the regime to remain stable and continue functioning. So this is kind of a big deal. And let's quick check in on the front lines. Russia throws men, firepower at Ukraine's Avdiivka to little avail. Staggering losses continue. This has been going on for over a month. We can still say the city of Avdiivka continues to hold. When we look at these casualty numbers, Russia's losing 800 to 1,000 every single day assaulting Avdiivka. Let me quick share with you a video. There are still a couple civilians remaining in the city of Avdiivka, and this is an evacuation crew getting some people out.
Давайте, сбоку. Свежий, да, вот авиа. Да, направо. Так, направо, окей. Ну все, доставив я Олександр.
According to Russia, this is a Russian city, a Russian-speaking city full of Russian people, and they absolutely destroyed it. So to recap, when the European Union enlarges and brings in new countries, this is what it looks like. But when Russia enlarges and brings in new countries, this is what it looks like. Subtle difference, if you've got a keen eye, maybe you can spot how the process differs. So Ukraine says calls for talks with Russia are either uninformed or misled. This was a statement put out by Ukraine's Foreign Minister Kuleba. And he spells it out perfectly for anyone still dumb enough to be arguing for negotiations or peace talks. To those with short memories, between 2014 and 2022, Ukraine held about 200 rounds of talks with Russia. During this period, 20 ceasefire agreements were reached, all of which were quickly violated by Russia. None of the 200 rounds of talks or the 20 ceasefires have ever prevented Putin from launching a brutal all-out invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. Those who argue that Ukraine should negotiate with Russia are either uninformed or misled, or they side with Russia and want Putin to take a pause before an even larger aggression. We should not and will not fall into this trap. There's been ceasefires, there's been negotiations, every time Russia has violated it, wanting more land and wanting more territory. So who's stupid enough to believe this, either willingly or deceptively? And I did not want to talk about this idiot, but he finally said something where I need to mention his name. And if you don't know who he is, he's an American named Vivek Ramaswamy, and he's currently running for president in the Republican primary. This man has no chance of being the nominee, has no chance of being president, but he's saying a lot of things to get attention. And one of the things he said last night in a Republican debate, Vivek calls Ukraine's Zelenskyy a Nazi during a Republican presidential debate. Here's the clip. I want to play it for you so you can hear it yourself.
It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelenskyy, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic.
So he called Zelenskyy a Nazi, the comedian in cargo pants, calling Ukraine not a democratic country. This is insanely offensive. Not even Putin himself, I think, has called Zelenskyy by name a Nazi. So this guy is more extreme than Vladimir Putin. And I just want to reiterate that President Zelenskyy, who is of Jewish heritage, his grandfather fought in the Soviet military against the Nazis. 3 of his grandfather's brothers and their families were all taken to concentration camps and killed by the Nazis. So Zelenskyy lost people in the Holocaust. And I can't imagine what he thinks or what he feels when idiots like Vivek call him a Nazi. So here's a tweet thread from Tanya, just dispelling all of Vivek's lies. Because this guy, to the word, regurgitates Kremlin propaganda everywhere. He's been on the Lex Fridman podcast. I think he's done Joe Rogan. The dude spends all day, every day on television just repeating Kremlin propaganda. So let's just quick go through these. I'll link this down below. But the first thing he said is that Ukraine is not a democracy because they have banned 11 opposition parties. All of these opposition parties are being funded by the Russians. They are pro-Russian political parties in a war in which Russia has invaded Ukraine. So no, they don't get to freely operate. Lie number 2, Ukraine consolidated media into one state TV media arm. Yes, this is true. The government is only paying with public funds for one TV company. But there's no ban. There is independent media in Ukraine. People can get on TV and radio waves and broadcast and more or less say whatever they want as long as they're not supporting Russian propaganda. Lie number 3, Ukraine threatened to not hold elections this year. President Zelenskyy is up for re-election in 2024, and according to their constitution, they can't have an election if they're still under martial law. They're still under martial law because every day Russia continues to bomb civilians. Russia bombs coffee shops, concert halls, museums, theaters. So yes, if Ukraine tried to have a national election, of course the Russians would bomb polling places and try and kill as many civilians as they could. As soon as Russia stops bombing civilian targets, I'm sure Ukraine would love to have democratic elections. Lie number 4, Ukraine has a president who's a Nazi. We already covered this. Lie number 5, justifying why Ukrainian regions should be occupied, stating that if they speak Russian, they should belong to Russia. So the Russian language was the official language for the Soviet Union, for state business. So in all the former Soviet republics, the older generations had to learn Russian in order to conduct state business. So this is very dangerous to say if you speak Russian, Russia has the right to invade you and annex your territory. This is unacceptable. It's obvious. The residents of the city of Kharkiv don't want to be part of Russia. The residents that remain in Bakhmut, the residents that remained in Avdiivka. Yes, these are Russian-speaking regions of Ukraine, but these people don't want to be part of Russia. They identify as Ukrainian. Vivek Ramaswamy continues to ignore the opinions of Ukrainians in favor of Russian propaganda. So once again, Ramaswamy in the primary is polling at about 5%. He has no chance of being the nominee. All he wants is political clout, name recognition. He wants people talking about him, which makes me regret even bringing him up, but given what he said, a lot of people are talking about him. I have to counter it in some way. But it's working. This guy was virtually unknown a year ago. He's only 38. And now on Twitter, he has 1.4 million followers. Idiots like Elon Musk continue promoting him and pushing his name. He can sell books after this. He can get a job as a commentator on cable news. He can work with venture capitalists. This guy is a millionaire and he made his money from private equity. I am thinking about making a separate video explaining how he made his fortune. He's a con man. He went to Harvard and Yale, so he's Ivy League educated, and he made his money ripping people off on Wall Street with private equity and a drug company. Pretty stupid, but if he says inflammatory and outrageous things, he gets more followers on Instagram. More followers on Instagram makes him more money. This guy's just in it for himself. He's just trying to make as much money as possible from running for president. I'll just mention some other things. Provocative Vivek Ramaswamy border comments anger Canadians. So he's even pissing off Canadians. Nikki Haley rips Vivek Ramaswamy as scum in fiery exchange after Republican hopeful calls out her daughter's TikTok use. So this is how much of a scumbag this guy is. Let me play for you this clip.
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which is about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy answer is
Politicians and presidential candidates should not be attacking each other's children. This is just common decency. This is like a basic human trait everyone should have. But once again, this guy's a scumbag. He's a liar. He's a con man. And Nikki Haley's daughter is currently 25. If a 25-year-old, she's a nurse, wants to use TikTok, what's Nikki Haley supposed to do to stop her? You can't stop a 25-year-old from using social media. So I don't know what Vivek was trying to accomplish other than to enrage people, to get attention. I apologize for even talking about this clown, but this is who Russia can get on their side. These are the kinds of people who support Russia. People with no ethics, people with no decency, people with no real ideas how to improve the world. He's a con man. Let's talk about Congress. I guess I need to apologize again. 96% of Ukrainian aid has already been spent. So this was the money allocated by Congress last year in order to militarily assist Ukraine. Officially, it ended on October 1st, and Congress will not vote on it. Speaker Johnson navigates Mission Impossible to avoid shutdown without a clear plan. Every day I pay attention to the news. I try to read between the lines, get the deeper story, and I get nothing from this guy. He has no plan. He's only been in Congress for 6 years, so Maybe it's unfair of me to expect more of him, but all he has to do is schedule an up or down vote on military assistance to Ukraine, and it would pass. It would get like 350 votes. But he won't do it, because somebody is directing him, is controlling him. He's talking about he's going to allow a vote if it's paired with some kind of border control or border funding bill, but nothing's been presented, nothing's been shown. The US government will shut down next Friday if a budget isn't passed. I haven't seen a plan. There's been no plan. It's incredibly frustrating because I care about my country as an American. I care about our military. I care about what's happening in Ukraine. And House Republicans are just playing politics, trying to defund the IRS. They're not taking anything serious, so it's incredibly frustrating for me. Zelenskyy says Ukraine has a concrete plan for battlefield success by year end. The Ukrainian president admitted progress has been slow, but said that Ukraine has a plan for the battlefield in 2024, but couldn't share the details. And the speculation is that something big is coming in the Kherson region. Russia cares the least about this region. Russia is defending this region the least. And this region is also now the weakest as far as getting air support. Where are the jets? Where are the helicopters? Can they really even effectively conduct combat missions this far away, given the arrival of longer range weapons like Storm Shadow and ATACMS? So I don't know. I don't know if Ukraine can conceal a large troop presence in the city of Kherson and then all of a sudden surprise the Russians with multiple landings across the river. This would be incredibly challenging, incredibly difficult, but I think the pressure's on. I think Ukraine wants to break this narrative of a stalemate in order to continue getting aid from the West. And they might roll the dice and do something very tricky. It's really bad. It's really that bad at the front, says Russian POWs. A Russian soldier said that he was told that it's better to use a grenade to kill himself and any enemies approaching rather than surrender and face torture. So Russian leadership is telling Russian soldiers that being a POW in Ukraine's custody is worse than what they're currently experiencing in the regular Russian military. To put this in perspective, here is a Russian man who surrendered. He defected to Ukraine because he couldn't take it anymore. The way that regular Russian soldiers are treated is so horrendous now. In order to keep them in line, he just had to take a chance and surrender to Ukraine. So this is this man's name. He was born in 1987. He's from the Murmansk region. And what he says is kind of heartbreaking. Like, this really kind of got to me. I feel empathy for this man, but here's what he says. Well, because Russia, I just know that if I go there, I will be killed. In Russia. They are saying that Ukraine is fascist, but in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's Russia that's fascist. I just understand perfectly well that I am here now, and I am safe here as in God's pockets. I'd rather help rebuild here. Help with what I can do, like dig or something. I'm a gas electric welder and an electrician by trade. So I can lay stone, tiles, and so on. I've worked in construction. I'd rather rebuild here than go there. If I go there, they'll start torturing me. They'll ask me what I said, what I showed. I don't need all that. They'll just torture me first and then probably kill me. Or they'll send me back to the front lines. Why would I want that? I tried to run away twice, and twice I was like, I just was standing all the time. I was strapped to a tree, and I got beat up all the time. So this mobilized Russian man is an electrician and a welder by trade, and he just wants to work. He just wants an average middle-class life, contributing to the world. And he was strapped to a tree and beaten by his leadership. Jesus. Here's a video I want to share with you. This is a Ukrainian defender using an FPV drone, first-person view, and it sounds like he hit his target.
Включайте відео, ми зашукаємо там.
У мене, блядь, пропадає цей телеметрія.
Ото не він, напевно. Справа. Правіше поверни. Вон якась хуйня, бач?
Ні.
Ні, нижче прицілу.
Я не бачу ніхуя.
Бля.
Во, блядь, стоїть.
Тут стоїть?
Во стоїть.
Во стоїть, давай. Хлопці, заходимо на ціль.
Є!
He looks fired up. Final clip I have for you guys. This just made me laugh. This is the Russian delegation. So I see Lavrov and Peskov. They went to Kazakhstan with Putin to meet with the president of Kazakhstan. The president of Kazakhstan speaks Russian, but instead chose to speak Kazakh. And the Russian delegation is alarmed and probably upset that he refuses to speak Russian.
биыл Қазақстан мен Ресей арасындағы 21-ші ғасырдағы тату көршілік және одақтастық туралы шартқа 10 жыл болатын болды. Сондықтан шын мәнінде бұл сапарымыздың мән маңызы айрықша. Глубоко символично, что ваш официальный визит в нашу страну, уважаемый Владимир Владимирович, проходит в преддверии 10-й годовщины договора о добрососедстве и союзничестве в 21 веке.
They all had to scramble for their earpieces to understand what he was saying, but Russia's losing control of Central Asia. This is a good thing. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.